Well, welcome to our live stream. This is our nightly live stream that we do each weeknight, Mississippi Family Homestead. So, how was your day?
Was good. It was
Good.
good.
well, um,
I had a Christmas party that I went to today, so I have my Grinch shirt on for Christmas.
and that fits you very well.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I'm
I
more.
think it's you that
I
needs
should
to.
be wearing the Grinch
Yes,
shirt,
yes,
shouldn't
you
I?
should be wearing the Grinch shirt,
Is that
not
the
me.
one that they y'all trade ornaments or something?
Yeah, so we
Uh,
traded ornaments, and I
where's
got
your ornament?
it's in there. So I got a really pretty little
Oh,
ornament to go on the tree.
well, I'm Scott,
And I'm Tina.
and this is Missile the cat. So, but again, welcome you. We're trying to do this live stream about nightly at 7:30 Central, and we're trying to talk about homesteading topics, especially for people that are trying to start a homestead. And if you've got any questions or comments, please just let us know. Drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. Tonight, we're talking about chickens again, and do you really want chickens? And before you get chickens, some things that you might should know.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of things that you need to know is it takes a lot of work to keep your chickens. So, you'll have a routine in the mornings, if your chickens are free range, you let them out. Got to check their food in the water, gather the eggs, and that takes about 15 to 20 minutes each day if that's what, if you have to do that. And then also, you need to spot clean that coop at least once a week, to get some of their poop out of there. You don't want that piling up in there, or at least adding some bedding at least once a week. And then also, monthly, you really need to do a deep clean and clean it out really good and put some new litter in there. And another thing, you may want to do is check your city and your county laws. They may have, if you're in a
HOA.
HOA, you'll have to, you may not can have like a rooster. So
You may not can have chickens. I know the HOA that we moved out of, you couldn't even, you weren't even supposed to have a garden.
right, right.
And,
So
which is one reason we kind of got out of
yeah.
there. But
And it might be like some permits or something like that if you're wanting to get chickens. It could be something like that, especially wherever you're living. If you're not out in the country, there's a lot of city ordinances sometimes, so you may want to, if you're on a homestead and you're trying to get chickens, you may want to look at some of those city ordinances that could be in your yard and your property. Chickens, if they free range, they do scratch your grass up. So if you've got a lawn that you're trying to keep up and you want to think about that, so they will scratch your lawn and dig it up, and you may have some bare spots where they've dug in there, and they like to take dust baths. They'll be out in your yard rolling around in that dust and taking the dust bath, and that's not good for your yard. But you don't have to free range them. But just keep in mind, if you don't free range them, they won't, you'll need to feed them a little bit different.
right.
Feed them more grains and stuff if they're not free ranging. But if they do free range, they'll get in your garden, they'll peck your tomatoes, peck strawberries. They like anything red. They like to eat anything red. I think the chickens can see color a little bit, so they can see greens and reds, I think. So,
I noticed when they were in here, I turned on a light that was blue and
yeah,
they freaked out.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
was weird. They just,
yeah,
and the rooster, I had a DeWalt yellow drill, and the rooster attacked me because of that yellow drill. It's
right.
like,
He didn't
and it's
like you
like,
have
it's
it in
weird.
his
It's
hand.
certain colors
Yeah,
that they like and certain colors they don't like. I thought that
right.
was the weirdest thing. But
So,
also, don't forget, you might need a permit. I don't remember if you said
yeah,
that or
it
not.
did. So you might need a permit if you're going to get chickens, especially if you're in a city zone and not, out in the county. Sometimes your county zones are a little bit less restricted than if you're living
Yeah.
in the city zones. I think that would be for every city that I know of,
Yeah, I think most cities probably have some kind of, especially roosters, because roosters are a little bit
loud.
louder.
Hmm.
You might want to talk to your neighbors and see
Yeah, let
what
them
they
know,
think. If
if
you
you,
like your neighbors, if you don't like your neighbors, oh
yeah,
well.
yeah,
But another thing you got to think about if you're thinking about raising chickens is think about can you afford it, or do you want to, is it worth it money
yeah,
wise?
yeah. So, you have to get a coop to begin with. And, if you're buying a coop, those can cost up to $1,000 sometimes. And, these that you buy and they're not very big, if you're not going to have very many chickens, that's okay. But those chickens need that room. So just keep that in mind. You're going to have to put up that upfront cost, to buy something. And it might be easier for you if you'll do a do it yourself kind of thing. And then you wouldn't have to, put up
Yeah,
as
if
money
you've
as
got
up
some
front.
do-it-yourself skills,
Mm-hmm.
you might can build a better quality one for cheaper price
Right.
because these,
Or even if it was the same price, if you build one, it's going to last longer.
yeah,
Yeah.
because these
So,
cheap ones just they don't, if they're unless they're going to be under a shelter, they don't seem to
no.
last a long time. If they're going to be out in the open, it just really they're not built. Most the ones we've seen now, you might find one that somebody built themselves or
Yeah. I
you know
think
th-
we had a friend that he found somebody that actually was selling some that they had built themselves, and I think it was pretty well
yeah, it
built.
was
But
well
as
built.
far as going and buying a prefab one, from a supply store,
One of the
that
Chinese ones.
yeah, they're not as well made as one that you could do yourself. Um, they make these fences that you could get and then maybe build something in that if you wanted to. They're like enclosures. You can get them on Amazon. Um, I thought about doing that one time. Is getting that whole fence. It's like an enclosure. It has and then it comes, with like a tarp or something, and then you could build something inside that. I think I've seen some homesteaders do that, where they would bought that outside fence and they built something inside it. So that's
Now I
some,
think if you know for sure you're gonna have chickens, I think I would build my own.
yeah,
If you're not sure if you want to keep them forever, you may can get purchase one, but I would build my own or
hmm.
have somebody build it if you know for sure that's what you want.
Now I think the one that we purchased, it only lasted, I think not, but 4 years, if less than that, like three. And then the roof on it kind of caved in and, you know, got some water damage and we had to replace that. And then, then the roof fell in further. And so it would just, it just is better if you can build your own in the long run, even if you're spending more money. And another cost would be, it costs money to actually buy your chickens the first time. So that's something that you have to think about. You can buy pullets and chickens from any local supply store. Just make sure that you keep in mind if you get those baby chickens that you also have to have a brooder to put them in at first. You don't want to just stick them outside without heat, and they need that in the first few weeks. So just keep that in mind. You would have to buy those pullets or babies and then have somewhere to keep them where they could be warm for the first 4 weeks. And then another cost is the bedding. Just for the first month, your bedding is $15 to $30. To buy enough bedding, and if you have a large area, it's going to be even more than that.
Remember, that's an ongoing cost, is the
Yeah,
bedding.
yeah, it is.
And when you're talking about bedding, what exactly are you talking about?
So the bedding for the chickens, they require either a lot of people use different things, but I like to use pine shavings as my bedding, and then also wood pellets as a bottom layer, and it just absorbs the water and everything from the chickens. And I actually use that in my run area and in my roosting area for my chickens. But that's an ongoing cost because you have to replace that. It deteriorates over time. It becomes dirty, so that is a thing that you have to do is replace that. So, and the other thing is, your food for your chickens. That's an ongoing cost. I think mine, I get 2 huge bags of crumble, and I think they're a little over 30 for 2 huge bags, and that lasts a month, and I have 30 chickens. So, of course, if you don't have 30 chickens, it won't be quite that much. But
I wouldn't advise starting
yeah.
out with 30 chickens.
And they do need some supplements and things, like oyster shells or, their mealworms to give them some protein and stuff like that. So that's a cost too to buy that, once a month to feed them. So just keep that in mind. And then, you'll have surprise cost. If you have a predator get into your chicken coop, you may lose some chickens, or they may cause damage, on the outside of your pen, and you have to replace that. Or there's, the weather could cause damage, or, it could just make your chickens sick and you could lose them and have to replace them after a while. And the other thing is, now chickens, you want to think about in the long term. Chickens don't lay eggs forever, and they do get older. So, in about 5 years, you may have to get different chickens or get more chickens because they've stopped laying eggs. So that's just one cost to think about too.
Yeah, and also looking at if you're going to expand, maybe getting more chickens.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to keep that cost in mind also.
And now one thing that you want to think about too is picking the right breed of chicken. There are certain breeds of chickens that lay better, like the Rhode Island Reds. They're wonderful layers. They lay eggs, every day usually, and they're really, really sweet. That chicken that's really curious that we have, we
have a chicken that every time I go in and film, she's the tech geek.
Yes.
And she just loves, she's real sweet. She just loves to come and look in the camera, and she's not scared of anything.
Her name is Sweet Pea. So I name my chickens too.
So what kind is she?
I think she's a Rhode Island Red.
Okay.
So she's a sweet girl. So yeah, her name is Sweet Pea.
Yeah.
That's what her name is. So next time you go in there, you can talk to her.
Okay.
And call her by name. But anyway.
But now, if you're just getting started, you probably you don't have to be real picky about. Can't you go to the local store and just get some?
Yes.
If
you can
just
go to the local
eggs?
store and just get some if you're wanting eggs. Most breeds that they sell at the store are good egg layers. They usually don't sell any that are not really good egg layers. Easter eggers, they lay those colorful eggs, and they're also good egg layers. They lay eggs. So I love I have an Easter egger that actually she is the only one that's still laying eggs. So she lays me a green egg every day. And there's different colors that you can get. They're like a dark green, or just a blue or a green color. I love that. I think that's so neat that they lay those colored eggs. So I'd like to look into the science of that to see why they
that
lay
would
those
be
eggs.
interesting. We need to do a video on that.
And let's see, Buff Orpingtons, they're like really friendly, and they're super, super soft and fluffy. And they get broody too. So if you want to raise some chickens and you have a rooster, then if you would get those, they love to sit on eggs and hatch them. So that's one thing to think about too in the long run. If you're wanting to hatch eggs or whatever, if you have that rooster and you want some chickens that are broody, they'll lay eggs. And silkies, they don't lay a lot of eggs, but they're so super cute. They really are. We love our silkies. And I know we have a live every day.
We've got the live camera on them, and there's a bunch of them in there, and unfortunately, there's quite a few roosters, and we're trying to get rid of those.
Yeah. So keep that in mind too. Also, if you're getting chickens, you'll have to get rid of. You can't have a bunch of roosters. They just fight and they don't do good together. Unless you're going to have a whole separate pen for just roosters.
Yeah, we've got a lot of roosters, but they're separated except for the silky pen, which we're working on now. But one thing you've got to think about is how many do you want? How do are you just looking for a few eggs for your family or what? So you gotta And probably need to start with what you say, three or so. Or,
3 or so. A good number is 6, especially if you have a family of 4. You need at least 6 hens to lay eggs. And then later on down the road, you might want to think about doing some meat bird chickens. So that's another cost. But then in the long run, if you raise those chickens from meat birds and freeze that meat, you're going to have that through the winter, and you won't have to buy chicken. You raise your own. So that's a thought. But I mean, my suggestion is not to get meat birds the very first thing. Get you some regular chickens first.
And we've had chickens for a while. What, 5 years?
Yeah, 5 or 6 years.
And we haven't gotten into. We are going to do meat birds at some point, but we just haven't taken that step yet because we want to make sure we've got everything we need.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still trying to learn a little more about it before we step off into that.
Yeah, but I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
And then what we've touched on some before is, about your rooster. Do you need a rooster? You don't have to have a rooster. Some people don't know when you first start out having chickens, you don't have to have a rooster for the chickens to lay eggs.
If you're free ranging, it's probably better, isn't it?
Yeah,
because they protect them.
Yeah, the rooster protects those hens. So if you're free ranging, it's probably better. Or if you're wanting to have fertile eggs, it's better. But you don't have to have a rooster. We did have a friend that I had hatched some chickens for, and he didn't know that you didn't have to have a rooster. And it's nothing wrong.
Did he ever get a rooster? He didn't.
He had a rooster. We gave him a rooster, but I think something got it or something. Okay. Yeah. So, which was sad.
But they do. I've heard they do protect them. If they're in an open area. So might want to think about that, especially if they're free ranging, because predators will get them, and a rooster he'll actually die for those other chickens.
He will for his hens. So also think about, if you're buying baby chickens, make sure that, you're getting pullets, because if you get a straight run, that means you're getting a 50-50 chance of having roosters and hens. So just think about that. You need to be able to do something with your roosters. You don't need a whole bunch of roosters. So, we touched on this a while ago, but the building your coop, you need to think about your size requirements for however many chickens you're going to have, because they do need 5 to 10 square feet of room to run around in. You don't want them all squished up in a little cage where they don't have room to run around, because that's kind of the point of getting chickens. When you buy those eggs from the supermarket, those chickens are in those little small cages, and that's one good thing that that if you're getting your own chickens, that how those chickens are raised and treated, and that they're treated well, and not in that small little space and just laying eggs for the whole lifetime, and not being able to run around and peck and scratch and have a good life. It makes your eggs taste better too if your chickens do free range. So just keep that in mind about your coop size. You don't want them all cramped up and stressed out. Now, when you're building your coop, you do have to think about some things that your coop needs. You got to have some ventilation. You probably want it covered, because hawks and owls will catch chickens.
Right.
And we touched on this the other day, but we had a pigeon that was hanging out. It was like a white pigeon, and an owl did swoop down and catch that pigeon the other day. And if you have younger chickens, a hawk or an owl will catch those also. Even larger birds they'll get a hold of. I think I had a hawk get in there one time, and it did kill one of my chickens.
Oh, really?
Yes, been a few years ago, but it did. It killed one of my chickens, and that was really sad. And we've had a raccoon kill our chickens.
Yeah.
So
the raccoon killed
baby chickens.
Yeah, several of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, like 3 of them.
Yeah.
I was really, really sad, because I really wanted to keep those chickens, but he did them in. Think about, you want to have somewhere in that coop for your eggs where they can lay their eggs, and have a place for that. You need access to clean it out, which to me, when you're buying a chicken coop from the store, it doesn't have a good way of cleaning that out. It's like when they build those, they don't understand the concept. They just put this little, tray in there, and the tray, you can't even put any bedding in it. It's just really, if you pulled that tray out, it would just be about this tall, and that's not enough. You need a deep bedding. So, that's something to think about too when you're building your coop and or purchasing one. They don't seem to understand the concept of what a chicken needs on those that are pre-bought. It has these. I don't know. I don't understand why they have a
Yeah.
little thing that's like
Probably the people that design some of those don't have never had chickens.
yes, yes.
But
There is a company that does. I think it's Carolina Coops or something.
oh yeah, they have some nice coops,
They
very
really do.
functional coops.
Yeah,
you
very
know.
functional coops, but I think it also costs a little bit of money. If
Yeah,
if you want to go with that, that's fine. But they do make.
I would make sure you're committed though
No, you're
first.
right,
But they
right.
have some. I've seen on YouTube. They've
Yeah,
got
they
some.
understand chickens.
Yeah, theirs are really functional and really look really nice.
Yeah, they do.
But
So
another thing you need to think about is where you're going to put them in your yard. Like you don't want to put them in a place that water stands because it'll be just a nasty mess. You want it.
right.
We had before we moved ours, it wasn't a place where water would stay, and now that they're moved, it's kind of on a hill, and we were worried about that at first, but it actually helps it dry up real quick.
Yeah, the
you know.
water drains, and actually, it doesn't get unless it just comes, a torrential rain. It doesn't get wet in there. So we really like it kind of being on the hill, and it kind of drains it. So you don't want to put your coop in a low lying area because it does, hold water, and then it's just a muddy mess, and your chickens are all in that muddy mess, and then you have to get in the muddy mess to try to clean it. So just keep that in
And you
mind.
might not, if you're living next door to somebody, you probably don't want to put if you have a choice, you may not want to put it right there, right next to the fence because then they're going to smell the chicken stuff and they're not going to really like that idea.
Right.
But, you've got to think about where you're going to put everything. And you also want to remember that you're going to have to water the chickens. So you've got to remember that,
Wherever you
can
put
you
it.
bring a hose there, or are you, are you able to bring water there to, to water them?
Which is one of the things that we're working. We need to work on with our chicken pen. We don't really, we have to bring the hose all the way around to the chicken pen. And what I want to do is actually make a rain barrel. So that may be something you could look into is getting a rain barrel for your chickens, and it'll catch that water, and then you could just use that rainwater to water them with. So that's one thing you can think about, as your investment, as you're actually getting the chickens, is to just go ahead and invest in a good water barrel for them.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen several other homesteaders, they have water barrels, and actually that Carolina coops, they bring a water barrel in when they build those coops
Yeah.
and put it in. I think, if you don't use the rain, even if you just fill that up, it'll last for a really long time when you're watering them.
Yeah. But also, you got to think about their food. What are you going to feed them? Now, either way, even if they're free ranging, you still have to feed them also.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
won't. If you free range them, they won't eat as much food, right?
Especially in the summertime. Yeah,
Okay.
they need a little bit more in the winter times. There's not as much bugs and green grass for them to eat if they're free ranging in the winter time. So they need a little bit more food in the winter than they do in the summertime.
So you want to you kind of want to decide before what you're going to feed them. What type of food you're going to feed them, and
Yeah,
you
and
can kind of research online and look at the stores, see what they've got.
you want to research what foods that you don't feed chickens. You can feed chickens most every food, but you don't want to feed them anything moldy. You're not going to feed them chocolate or anything like that.
There's
Also,
certain leaves you can't feed them
right,
to, like
tomato leaves.
tomato leaf.
Yeah, and then potato. They call potatoes night vegetables. I guess because they go in the ground. So anything that's a night vegetable, you don't want to feed them. They're not supposed to eat potatoes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure a dot of potato would not kill them, but just they don't need to be eating anything that would make them sick.
Yeah.
So,
So,
I mean, it's just like a dog. Certain foods dogs can't have either. Dogs aren't supposed to have grapes or anything like that. So it's the same thing for your chickens. There are certain foods that are toxic to them and will make them sick. So.
right. So where are we?
Okay, so our water. So make sure that you've got to have them plenty of water, especially in the summertime and also in the winter. You don't think about it as much, but they do need water just as much in the wintertime as they do in the summertime because they need, fresh water and clean water in order to, have that energy to keep warm. So,
One thing to think about is also is like how many, I know we talked about how many chickens, but like, you don't want to get way too many eggs.
yeah, and
I don't know.
nowhere to put 'em.
Sometimes it's good, but
You can give them away.
yeah, I know this is off track, but I was thinking, you don't want to go way crazy and get way too many eggs and have to waste the eggs.
Right. Now there are some things you can do if you are in abundance of eggs. You can actually freeze eggs. So I'd like to do a video on that maybe. Talk
I
about
didn't know
that
you
later.
could freeze an egg.
Yes, you can. You can freeze an egg.
Are you sure?
Yes, you break the egg and you put it in like a ice tray, and put it in the freezer and freeze it. And
What do
then
you do with it after?
You take them out and you put them in a bag, and then put them back in the freezer.
No.
Yes. Now you're not gonna want to make a fried egg out of it, but you can use them to cook with. Just saying. And you can actually scramble those if they're like that.
Well, that's interesting.
It is interesting. And you
I don't
can
believe
do
it.
it.
I don't believe it.
It's the truth. I
yeah.
promise it's the truth. And now if you don't wash your eggs, they can actually last in the refrigerator for 3 months. And outside of the refrigerator, if unwashed, they can last for 2 months. So just keep that in mind. They do last a long time if you have eggs, and if you're eating them every day, they will last.
Another
But
thing,
you can freeze them.
y'all might want to look that up. You want it after you get them, you do want to make sure you keep them healthy, keep an eye on them.
Yeah. So seasonal, we've touched on a little bit, but there's things in the summertime that you need to do extra, and that'll be a challenge sometimes. They drink more water in the summertime, so you have to make sure that their water's filled up all the time. You want to treat them with some frozen treats during the summertime to keep them cool. And if it's really, really hot, I like to get like the solar fans. You can buy a little solar fan and let it blow on them. That's one thing that I have that on the baby chickens. And I have a solar fan in there, so that blows on them in the summertime to kind of keep them cool. And I think that's a good idea. So.
And, I've got a question. Somebody that's just starting may not know what this is. What is a broody hen?
So a broody hen is a hen that wants to hatch her own eggs and have babies. So what they do is when they're broody, they just kind of get in their little nesting box where they normally lay their eggs, and they won't move. They just sit there, and then if you try to move them, they puff up and they kind of try to peck at you. So they just want to hatch their own eggs. And actually, my friend's chicken was broody and she didn't have a rooster, so I took her some eggs, and that hen actually hatched those eggs. It went broody and it hatched those eggs.
Who is that?
Susan. Yeah.
Okay.
So she did hatch her own eggs with her broody hen. And it's amazing how that hen can hatch those babies. Because here we are, when we hatch them, we have to put them in the incubator. It has to be a certain temperature. and all of these things, but naturally that mama chicken can just sit on those eggs and hatch them. I think that's really,
The mama hen knows what to do, and then
yeah,
humans have to have classes.
right.
So, that's really weird. But
Yeah.
one thing that you got to look out for that's you know, once you get chickens is you're probably going to have a few problems with them, and some things to be alarmed for, like they start that pecking order thing.
Yeah. So you're always going to have a hen that's like the best hen in the group and she thinks she's something and the rooster actually likes her the best. And then you're going to have a chicken that is kind of stays to herself and she's kind of to the side and nobody really likes. I guess it's kind of just a natural thing, in life. Humans, we kind of tend to do that too. You'll have your person that's kind of to theirself and then you'll have your real popular person. So it's kind of the same with the chickens. They have a pecking order and they'll peck at each other and kind of decide who's boss, but that's natural, so you can expect that from them. And you need to look for some things that might happen. They may have a little bit of blood on them or something. Usually it's okay. The other chickens usually peck on them, but if you see too much of that, you may have to separate them. And one thing that causes that, you can have too many chickens or too less chickens. So just make sure for your area that you have plenty of room, and you can't have too many roosters to hens either, or that'll cause issues. You want one rooster to 10 hens. So,
and another thing you got to be prepared for is the emotional thing of, we talked about predators can get in there in the chicken coop and get your chickens, but you got to kind of, make sure you're the type of person that if something happens to them that, it's going to be sad. It's usually for everybody. And, you just got to kind of be prepared for that.
Right. I mean, as I've said several times, to me, the chickens are kind of like owning a dog or a cat. They're my pets, and I love them just like I do my our cat and our dog. So just keep that in mind. One thing, you may have possums or skunks that get in there and want to get to your eggs. So just make sure that you're prepared and you have a good area where it's fixed where they can't do that.
Another thing that it's hard to fix, so you can't get in there, is snakes.
Right.
A lot of times you will find
a chicken snake.
Yeah, a chicken snake. For us, I don't think have we had a poisonous snake in there yet?
I don't think so. I think they've been just a chicken snake.
But you be extremely careful when you're checking your eggs, because
those snakes do get in there. It's hard to secure your pen where the snakes can't get in. So just keep that in mind, that you might have a snake get into your coop.
Yeah, we've had that happen just a few times.
Yeah. So another thing is your management of your coop. You've got to clean it and keep it clean. You can't just leave those chickens out there and not ever clean it out. And so that's another thing that you want to keep in mind. If you don't like the smell of of animals and poop, then raising chickens is not for you, because that's part of it. You've got to clean them.
Maybe stick to gardening.
Yeah. So stick to gardening. So that's one main thing I would tell you. If that bothers you to clean the coop, or the smell bothers you, then don't get chickens, because you have to take care of them and clean them out. So that's one thing that you may want to think about too if you're thinking about getting chickens. It's not all, just eggs every day.
And one thing to think about also is, if you are the type of person that likes to go on vacations, it's really hard, for us to go out of town here now, because there's so much to do.
Right.
And somebody has to stay here on the homestead at some point, to
take care
of the animals, because it's not something that you can just say, hey, I'm gone for 2 weeks or gone for a week, and then come back. And they have to be tended to every single day, every holiday, every single day,
So
So,
have you a neighbor or somebody that can come see about your chickens if you go out of town, on vacations and stuff. So keep that in mind. It is maintenance.
and you could have some automated water things or automated feeders, but those
They
are nice. But I don't know that I trust those. Like if it didn't go off, then
right.
they'll.
Or the silkies, like my silkies out there, they regularly knock the feeder over even when it's full, and so it spills everywhere, or it's spilled over and they can't get to it to get the food, and it's all up in there and they can't get to it. So that's another thing. If you have your waters and your feeders, make sure they're secured so they can't
Right.
knock them over.
Did
They
you
do.
ever secure that one? I noticed they keep knocking it over.
Well, is it knocked over again?
Well, I didn't look today, but
Yeah, well, it wasn't this morning. I mean, it was fine this morning, so I'll check it in the morning, make sure it's not knocked over
okay.
again. But yeah, they like to do that. I guess there's actually too many of them in there, and we got to get rid of some of the roosters. I hate it, but that's what we got to do.
But kind of to sum it up, just make sure you do a lot of research before you just jump in and get them. Make sure it's exactly what you want. But we've said all the negatives about it, but they have a lot of positives. The
Yeah.
best thing is, you got those fresh eggs that just you can't get those eggs from the grocery store.
No, you can't. I mean, they have the eggs at the grocery store that say free range, but to me, they don't taste the same as
Yeah,
our chicken eggs do.
they may be close, but they're not the same.
No, they're not. And you know where your eggs are coming from. You know how your chickens are treated. So that's one good thing about it. And lots of people, I'll give them away sometimes, my eggs, and they say that they love making like cakes and things with those eggs.
Oh yeah, they love making cakes with them.
Yeah.
Somehow they taste a lot better with with those farm fresh eggs,
Mm-hmm.
real farm fresh eggs. So you got anything else to add?
I guess not. So tomorrow night, though, I hope y'all can join us. We're gonna be sitting around the campfire, and
Hopefully, we're going to be
yeah,
sitting around
yeah.
the campfire.
I don't think it's supposed to rain, but
Okay.
we're
gonna
hopefully
we're gonna try to.
yeah, to sit around the campfire and just talk about maybe a little bit of our story and why we decided to homestead.
Okay, so thank you for joining us. If you're watching this on the replay, you have any comments, please let us know in the chat, and hope you can join us again tomorrow. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.